The Maine coast isn't a single place, but a number of places, a land unto itself. Counting inlets, bays, and islands, the Maine coast is almost 2,500 miles long. That's a lot of mileage to explore, so each visitor will remember their own special place or experience. For some, it's the still of a foggy harbor. For others, the charm of the coastal villages. For many, it's the romantic landscapes of sea and rock. But for everyone, the Maine coast is a singular place, somehow in tune with the rhythms of life. Its people have a special relation to the sea. And here, there's a living sense of history. In fact, everywhere are reminders of Maine's heyday as the center of American coastal trade. Throughout our early years, Maine's inlets and deep harbors and its vast number of stout pine trees made it a perfect place to build boats. The term down east, so often used to describe this coast, was coined during the coastal trade. As the tall ships set sail for Maine from Boston, they would be sailing somewhat east, and they would be sailing down the prevailing summer wind. So to get to Maine, they had to sail down east. No single tour could possibly reveal the whole story of this unique region, and so it is with this video. So view this video tour like a series of snapshots or postcards you might bring back from your own trip. Each picture calls up a special memory, and seen together, they provide you your own tour of the Maine coast.
The windjammer, as we know them today, are schooners that carry passengers for hire on the coast of Maine. We go out, most of us go out weekly cruises. There are 13 or 14 different vessels in this that do the same thing that we do, and call them windjammers, Maine windjammers, and they're all around us now. We see 5 or 6 here just where we are now. The fleet does basically the same thing we do. We carry passengers and sail up and down the coast at our own speed. I'm Captain Hawkins, and we're on the schooner Mary Day out of Camden, Maine, and we're going to be sailing around on the islands in mid-coast Maine. She's a 90-foot schooner that we carry passengers for hire on. She's typical of the kind of vessel that was built 100 years ago on this coast to haul freight cargoes up and down the coast. She was built specifically for carrying passengers, but she's along the lines of an old coaster. One time, these vessels were literally thousands of them around. They were as numerous as trucks are on the road today. And they carried freight. They carried everything that moved was carried by boat. We go back to that, and we're moving around on a boat that's propelled by a sail, and the sails are handled by people, and it gives people a chance to find out what it was like to pull on a line and get some small idea of what life must have been like for people who made their living this way. And it is a very romantic thing. It's fun. You're sailing around among the islands that these boats sailed around. For the most part, the islands look the same as they did when these boats were carrying freight 100, 150 years ago. You get up in the morning fairly early. We serve breakfast at 7:30, so everybody's up and around fairly early. And then we usually get underway right after breakfast. That is, get the anchor up and leave the harbor that we're in. And the people help get the sails up. And the sails are heavy. It takes a lot of people to get. It takes a minimum of 12 pretty healthy people to get the sales up. So we're happier if everybody does work. So we put a string of people on either side, and a crew member at the head of them that directs them, tells them what to do, and they hoist the sails. And then we have to hoist the anchor, and that's always fun. It's a hand-powered windlass. When the anchor is broken out of the bottom, we put up more sails, depending on what the breeze is. We have 7 altogether, so we can spend the better part of the morning getting sails up. It's fun. Everybody gets to work as much as they want and help out. Once we're underway, people usually tend to fall asleep or sit and read or talk to each other, get to know everybody else on the boat. Everybody spends most of their time getting to know everybody else on the boat and looking at the scenery, seals and porpoises and all that kind of stuff that shows up. If it's a quiet day, there's a lot of people reading and sleeping and laying around. If it's a windy day where we're sailing fast and it's exciting, there's a lot of people up looking around and seeing what's going on. Of course, the scenery's going by faster than. The best thing about a windjammer cruise is that it's not like anything that people are likely to encounter in their daily lives. Therefore, it gives them a chance to step into another world. There's no motors, there's no cars, there's no asphalt, there's no telephones. You don't have to cook your meals. You know, everybody gets away from everything they want, and they get a chance to sit back and sort of reflect on what it is going on in their own lives. We didn't put a motor in on purpose so we don't have to listen to all that noise. We don't have showers, so nobody has to fight over who's going to be in there and who isn't. And you know, there's a lot of reasons. We didn't put a lot of these modern conveniences and whatnot into the boat for a reason. It's part of the flavor of this trip is to get a little bit of a taste of what it was 100 years ago, 50 years ago.
No symbol evokes the Maine coast like the lonely lighthouses. Like mute guardians, they point our imaginations to a romantic and perilous history. Maine's rocky coast has always struck terror into the hearts of mariners steering their boats to safe harbor. So for almost 200 years, these beacons have provided guidance and hope to Down East sailors. Up and down the coast, these lights continue to serve as landmarks for coastal traffic. Starting at the Nubble Light off York Beach, Maine's lighthouses march in ragged file up the coast to America's easternmost point at Quoddy Head. The determined lighthouse buff can find more than 60 lighthouses along Maine's coast. At Pemaquid Point is one of Maine's most scenic lighthouses. Pemaquid is also home to a lighthouse and fishing museum. The Port Clyde Light still marks a busy fishing harbor. And pictures of Bass Harbor Light have graced many a calendar. But today, there is a sadness about many of these lighthouses. Most of the old keepers' houses are now shuttered and abandoned.
Light Station Owl's Head is located on the southwest point of Penobscot Bay, just entering the bay. Back in the early 1800s, after quite a few shipwrecks in the area, Congress deemed it necessary to establish a light here at Owl's Head. My name is Jerry Grimm. I'm a first-class boatswain's mate. I'm the officer in charge. My duties here at Light Station Owl's Head are basically to administrate the unit, take care of paperwork. The government's famous for its paperwork. Maintain the cleanliness of the area, make sure the aid itself is kept in working order. Well, the light itself that's located up in the tower is the original light. Records show that it was built in the early 1800s, although the exact date of manufacture isn't known because over the years of polishing, the engraved date has been worn away, but it is a beautiful optic. It's called a fourth order classical lens, originally powered by whale oil. Congress has deemed it necessary to automate the lighthouses as a cost-cutting measure. This particular lighthouse is slated for May of 1990, and at that time this will be the last Maine lighthouse, family lighthouse. I think when people think of lighthouses, they picture not much like the coast here, wave-swept, rocky, isolated, just a lighthouse keeper with his wife and his family, alone and together. And I suppose that conjures up images of romance. It is beautiful. You never really get tired of the view. I think you're looking at one of the most beautiful spots on the coast of Maine, and the coast of Maine is one of the most beautiful spots in the whole country as far as I'm concerned. We'll always have fond memories of our duties here at Station Halsey.
Well, I usually get up early in the morning, sometimes anywhere from 4:30, 5 o'clock, depending on what time of year it is and how thick the lobsters are. And we'd get down to the boat and either bait up, or if we've already put bait aboard from the night before, we'd just head out to our first trap, which we usually run in strings, of anywhere from 10 to 100 traps in a string, depending on where the bottom is and how's it fishing. We'd start by looking for our color. Well, everybody has a different color buoy, and the buoy color, it makes it easy for you to distinguish which traps are yours and which are somebody else's. And from there, we'd haul our first trap, and the man I have going with me, our stern man, would take care of the front head in the trap where the bait's kept. He'd bait the bag and put the reds and herring in it, and bait the trap and clean out his end of the trap, and I'd be measuring the lobsters with a gauge the state's given us that tells us what size we can keep and what size we have to throw back. You can haul a lot of traps and there'll be lobsters in them, but most of the lobsters, most of the time you have to throw back because either they're too small or they're too big, but mostly too small. After we'd haul and measure what lobsters we'd have, he would plug them and throw them in our tank. Plug them would be, he'd have to take and put a plug in the claw of the lobster so he wouldn't bite. Because one claw is like a feeding claw and the other claw is like a crusher claw. And the crusher claw is what we usually band because it really does smart. You could haul one trap and have 10 lobsters in it, and you could haul the next trap for nothing, and a lot of them for nothing. A good day you could have 500 pounds, and on a bad day you could have 50 pounds. Some lobsters are shipped right out in the crates like we unloaded down Burt's Wharf, and other lobsters are put in pounds where they've blocked off coves. And they leave these in there until wintertime when the price is up. I just liked it ever since I was a kid. I started out going with my father, and I enjoyed being on the water. I like the weather. I like being out in the open air. I can work for myself. I have nobody telling me what to do, and I enjoyed the scenery and just the fresh air and just It's like treasure hunting. You know, you never know what you're going to get.
No tour of the coast is complete without a lobster dinner.
A pound is a holding place for lobsters. It's not because we sell them by the pound, it's because we have them stored inside there. We're in Trenton, Maine. We're at the Trenton Bridge Lobster Pound. This is where we sell the lobsters by the pound, and we bring them out here and boil them in the seawater. These are built out of blocks, cookers, and they're fired with wood. They have a much better flavor boiled in the seawater, and it's lobster in the rough. People pick out their size, we weigh them and cook them, and they eat them right inside or outside, or we wrap them to go. They crack the shell, pick the meat out themselves, and eat them right here. A lot of the local people come here, and it's no frills. They just can eat lobster.
Somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 islands cling to Maine's coast, depending on whether you count the ones without trees. Most of the larger islands have their own special admirers. They offer a rugged beauty, a quiet solitude, and a sense of wilderness hard to find in our everyday world. Monhegan Island is considered by many one of America's most serenely beautiful places. It is even designated an official national landmark. Monhegan is a magnet for artists who come to paint, to photograph, and often just to experience its splendor. There's not much to do once you are on the island except walk and look and paint. It's said that tiny spirits inhabit the middle of the island in the Cathedral Woods. But the quiet walk through these woods is merely a preparation for the discovery of the outer headlands. With names like Burnt Head, Gull Rock, and the Washerwoman, each of these granite cliffs is given its own personality. Yet for all its natural beauty, Monhegan is, after all, a lobster port. Everywhere in the village, you're reminded that the people here make their living off the sea. The rich lobster grounds around the island fish well in the winter, when the inshore lobsters have disappeared. There is a quiet magic about Monhegan. Further to the east and north, the islands become more rugged and wild, and can provide the adventurous a different kind of experience.
We're at the Keeper's House, which is a lighthouse station here on an island off the coast of Maine. We've converted the entire site into an inn where people can come and get a taste of something we think is really special. It's really sort of a magical place here, and that's what people tell us when they come and stay. It seems to just have sort of a timeless way of maintaining its beauty. There's no road, there's no power, there's no TV or telephone. The whole thing is sort of a pioneering adventure just to get here. You wind down the Blue Hill Peninsula and into Stonington, you catch the mail boat there, and you get about a 40-minute trip just winding in and out between the islands to get out here. The mail boat drops you off here, and you wander up through the woods, and that's how you find the place. That's how you get here. And the house is charmed, I think, the feeling inside the house. And we have gas lights and candlelight, kerosene lights for lighting because we have no electricity. And then people generally watch the sunset, and then during the daytime they hike in the southern part of the island, which is part of Acadia National Park. Very spectacular trails and scenery, very unspoiled, very uncrowded. We don't think of ourselves as innkeepers. We don't think of ourselves as lighthouse buffs. To me, this whole thing is just a work of art that we've been able to put together, and the people who come are just one of the elements of the whole picture.
Maine's coastal towns grew up around snug, deep harbors and close to the inland pine forests. Yet from such a common history, each town has developed an individual character. Visitors usually develop special favorites. Ogunquit is home to Perkins Cove, one of Maine's most popular scenic attractions. Portland's downtown has updated its colonial history with a lively market atmosphere. Boothbay Harbor's layout of islands and coast draw crowds in the summer. Lively Camden was once the setting for the movie Peyton Place. Reserved Old Blue Hill discreetly provides summer lodgings for many old American fortunes. Of course, Bar Harbor has long been a summer home of the super rich and famous. Rockefellers, Vanderbilts, and Pulitzers had rustic mansions here. Today, these families still summer here, lending an aura of an earlier, more cultured age. For the not-so-rich, there's a way to experience a bit of that opulent era.
My name is Heidi Davis, and we're sitting here in the parlor of the Bayview Inn in Bar Harbor, which is located right on the water. The Bayview was built in the early 1930s by the original owner, Major George McMurtry. We use this place mostly as a summer home. It's been in the family for 20 years. We opened it up as an inn in 1973. Major George McMurtry used to play cards in here with Churchill and the Pulitzers and several other names. Churchill used to stay as McMurtry's guest in room 3 up here, which we call the Churchill room. It's gorgeous, has a king-size bed, fireplace, and above the fireplace is the picture of Churchill himself. And it's been quite nice, it's been quite different having it as an inn as opposed to a home, but I think it's such a special place that we enjoy having the public enjoy it also.
Many people want something more from a trip to Maine than beautiful vistas, quaint villages, and sailing ships. There has to be shopping, and there is. From L.L. Bean in Freeport to the craft shops of Bar Harbor, there are always buying temptations. Ogunquit, Camden, Portland, and Bar Harbor offer more antique, craft, and specialty shops than you can imagine. But for the true aficionado, nothing compares to the discovery of Maine crafts.
What makes a Maine craft is, well, we live in Maine and we make them, and it's Maine. Most of it's made with the Maine pine. Yep, my name's Darrell Gray. This is my wife Joanne, and you're in Trenton, Maine, on the Ellsworth Road, Route 3. We make a lot of the stuff ourselves. And this year the unique thing is the animals, Tweety Bird and Sylvester. Well, a lot of them I'll think up on my own.
Some are patents that we found. Some we've had other people ask for, and we've made them up the best we could.
That's a Fanny design.
Oh, this is the original, the big red one down there.
Meet an awful lot of, interesting people. This summer I had a couple in here from England. They don't have skunks in England, so they wanted a set of skunks to send back some of their family over there in England. And I said, just a minute, I'll run out back and get you a couple of live ones. Glad to get rid of them.
For most people, the high point of any trip to the Maine coast is a tour of Mount Desert Island and Acadia National Park. Acadia was the first national park east of the Mississippi, and it's unique in that it was created early in this century entirely from land donated by Bar Harbor's wealthy summer residents. Acadia is also special because it's the only place on the Atlantic coast where the restless sea meets the quiet of the mountains. The forces at work in this place create one of nature's true wonderlands. Easy access to Acadia is provided by the Park Loop Road. This road stays within the confines of the park and was designed to allow the visitor to quickly reach many of Acadia's scenic wonders. The first area of interest along the Loop Road is the Sur-de-Mont Spring and the Wild Gardens of Acadia. Here, you can become familiar with the variety of wildlife you'll find in the park. Sand Beach is a particularly popular summertime destination, since it's one of very few real beaches along this rocky coast. The Maine water, however, is very cold, so few people actually go swimming at Sand Beach. Beyond Sand Beach, you'll find the most scenic and popular stretch of rocky shore in the park. The centerpiece of this section is Thunder Hole. Here, on the right tide, the name becomes obvious. After Thunder Hole, you come to Otter Cliffs. These sheer cliffs rise 200 feet out of the ocean and offer magnificent views back on the park. Beyond Otter Cliffs, miles of rocky shore offer varieties of postcard views. Eventually, the Park Loop Road turns inland toward a varied section of mountains, lakes, and forests. Here you'll find Jordan Pond and the Bubbles. There's a lovely nature trail along the edge of the pond. Beyond Jordan Pond, the Loop Road takes you through quiet woods and mountain vistas until it turns off and winds to the summit of Cadillac Mountain. At 1,530 feet, Cadillac Mountain is the highest spot on the eastern seaboard of the United States. The top of Cadillac is the point where the first light of the rising sun touches the American continent. Viewing this sunrise from Cadillac Mountain is an unforgettable experience. But then, so is the entire tour of Acadia National Park.
I think it's important to realize that coming to Acadia and just doing the Park Loop Road is like seeing the very tip of an iceberg. Acadia National Park has much to see, and driving the Loop Road only hints at what the park really has to offer. My name is Lois Winter. I'm a park naturalist at Acadia National Park, and I'd like to share with you today some of the things that I find special. What makes Acadia special to me are not necessarily the places that others have labeled as scenic highlights. The specialness of Acadia rests in those places off the beaten track, where I can enjoy solitude, appreciate the beauty of the natural world, and reflect on our cultural heritage. There are, for example, 120 miles of hiking trails and 50 miles of carriage roads in Acadia National Park. One of the delightful things about the park's carriage roads is that they offer people an opportunity to hike with a great deal of leisure. The carriage roads are more than gravel roads. The carriage roads were built as an answer to the coming of motorized traffic on Mount Desert Island. John D. Rockefeller Jr., one of those summer residents, decided to build a network of gravel roads through the backcountry of Acadia for himself and for his friends, and in fact for anyone who wanted to use them, so that everyone would have the opportunity to enjoy the backcountry of Acadia, free from the noise of the infernal combustion engine. Almost all of Acadia's shoreline is rocky, which brings up one of my favorite pastimes here. It's called doing nothing on the rocks. It's delightful, I think, to find a comfortable rock, to sit on the shore, to watch the gulls fly by, the boats chug along, and the tides rise and fall. Visiting Acadia in a day is kind of like visiting the Smithsonian in a day. It doesn't work. So to see Acadia in a way that the spirit of this place soaks in really takes time. you might consider joining park naturalists on walks and talks and programs. Altogether, we lead about 120 programs weekly, including boat cruises, mountain hikes, and nature walks. For me, I can find the specialness of Acadia in things as diverse as the chatter of warblers in the spring, the grand vistas from the mountaintops, and the intricacies of the design of carriage roads. So if you come to Acadia, take the time and visit at a pace that allows you to find your own special attractions.
So, what was your special attraction? Was it the quiet end of a day's sail? Was it the ceaseless roll of the waves against the rocks? Or was it that perfect sunset that helped you realize that you had found a different world here along the Maine coast?